Roger Goodell has come out and said, not only do I think London can support a franchise, but I think London can support two franchises. So all of a sudden, it's not just going to be the London Jaguars. Like it sounds like expansion maybe coming to Europe. Are you interested? And not maybe Kadeem himself, but think on a bigger scale. Do you believe Europe can support multiple NFL franchises with the logistics of divisions and flying out and flying back and forth? Do you think it's possible?
I think it's a very loaded question. In terms of would fans be up for, say, even two teams in the UK? Yeah, yes and no. You're not going to get, hardcore NFL fans who have supported their teams for years jump over to this UK team. It's not going to happen. What will happen is people who are just getting into the NFL might go, do you know what? I'm going to start with this team because, it's my local team. It's all that kind of stuff. The logistics is that while Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, which is where the Dolphins played against the Jaguars last year, while that has an NFL pitch underneath the soccer pitch, Tottenham still play home games there. So you have to have a situation where for 8 weekends of the season, Tottenham can't be at home. So you've got to kind of have it partnered with that. You've then got to look at, okay, well, how is it going to work? Will the London team be flying to and from each week? I know that given where some teams fly from state to state, the time difference is somewhat similar, I guess, like in terms of 8 hours and stuff like that. But really and truly, would you have the London team play, 8 games on the road and then 8 games at home? What does that mean for the traveling team? Do you try and get the 8 London games at the start of the season and at the end of the season? And then you get a situation where, say, the London team makes the playoffs and gets home field advantage. Who in January wants to fly to London or to Munich or anywhere in Europe? They don't want to. So logistically, there was so much that needs work. But can it happen? Yeah, of course it can. 100% it can.
Maybe we should wait till we get that plane that could make it from New York to London in 80 minutes. You heard about that?
I haven't heard about that.
Yeah, I'm gonna need that. I'm gonna need that to be out for like 10 years before I trust it.
Yeah.
Like straight
A
up,
good
bro.
thing, yeah.
Like, yo, I'm gonna need like a few runs before we jump on a Sonic jet that gets us from New York to London in 80 minutes. So man, I ain't gonna lie, this is pretty interesting. How about this, Kadeem? It says, and this is a conversation. I'm not sure if who Roger Goodell is talking to, and this is a lot of information in here that you just covered too. But he's not just talking about how the Rams and the Chargers share LA.
Mm.
They were thinking maybe you just have a whole division over there. So now that's 4 teams. So I'm old enough to remember when Carolina Panthers weren't a team, when Jacksonville Jaguars weren't a team, and they came into the league at the exact same time. They were expansion teams. They came into the league at the exact same times, and we went from 30 teams to 32 teams. I'm old enough to remember when the Seattle Seahawks were an AFC team. That was a real thing. They were an AFC team. So when you're talking about 4 teams in Europe, there'll be a division of their own. And now it's less travel for the teams that are domestic, and it's less travels for those teams that are international because they'll play each other 8 times. You see what I'm
Mm.
saying?
Yeah.
So, but then at the end here, it says something about and what you brought up about travel. Travel is just one of the various issues to be resolved when it comes to putting teams in Europe. Plenty of players won't want to play there. Many free agents will target domestic markets. Some draft picks may even be inclined to refuse to sign with a team in London or Germany or wherever. So that's what it says. So yeah, man, I think it's very, very, very interesting. I don't think we're set up for it yet. But it is a conversation. And since we GTD and co-host is across the pond, why not talk about it?
It's funny. So whenever whenever teams travel to the UK, and as journalists we get to speak to players, one of the first questions is always, would you play in London? Or can you imagine a team in London? And they all say the same thing. Yeah, it can be so good, blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. When you ask them, would you move to London? but because it's one thing to leave your family when you're flying around, the US. It's another thing to then move your family to London, or what do you do in the off season? Do you go back to the States? Do you stay in London? It's especially where the pound is right now. Do you pay your players in pounds or dollars? Like there's so many variables. And again, if you're a top free agent, why would you leave? Prime example, who has a choice between the Dolphins and the Jets last year or this year, and he jokes and says, I chose Miami because of no state tax.
No state tax.
Who is going to go to London? So your choice is London, where it's rainy 24/7.
24/7. It is gloomy in London.
Yeah, it's cold. Okay, London has a lot of sites, and I guess, okay, in your off time, you can go watch the many soccer teams that are around London and stuff like that. But realistically, you're going to give up that to not play in Miami with the beaches and, no state tax. And, I would say Pitbull, but, I guess Gloria Estefan, whatever music you like, it's, yeah. And I guess, as fans, yeah, selfishly, I would love to have a team over here. I'd be there, try and get it every single week. But also, there is an argument to be made that the novelty would wear off very quickly. It's great when you have, 3 games a year, and it's 3 Sundays out of the year you're there. But
I'll be real, Seattle's gloomy too. No one wants to go to Seattle. No one's, you know what I'm saying? But it's still domestic. So I'll be real with you, Kadeem. You just said something, and I want to catch it before it slips. But I don't mind. I love London. I love London, bro. I'll be real with you. When people talk about moving football teams, I think it's the worst thing ever, because you have generations of fandom. You know what I'm saying? And then you rip. It's like almost taking out an organ of your body and while you're still alive. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, I need this. How am I supposed to survive without this? Right? So you take it away from people, but business is stuff that we cannot control. Right? Now, again, we could talk about expansion, and I found my point, what you were saying. I think there's something to be said, Kadeem, when you're in London or you're in Europe and this NFL phenomenon comes once a year for 4 weeks. Isn't it? It's 4 weeks, right?
No, I think there's 3 games this year.
Okay, 3 or 4 weeks. We'll say 3 or 4 weeks. The NFL phenomenon is there. Some people don't even stay awake to watch the Super Bowl. You could attest to that, right? Not saying you're one of them, but people, like, they're not hooked yet. They're still. I mean, I remember me, LB and Bert was at the Saints versus Dolphin game in London, and they still had the rules up on the replays, on the jumbotron, like flag on the play, roughing the passer, and then there was the rules of roughing the passer were up on the jumbotron because you're still trying to educate the fans. So it's one thing to be, oh, the NFL's coming to town, it's gonna be a live 4 weeks. Yo, that's because the NFL is just a side chick to people in Europe. You know what I'm saying? The side chick is always fun. You know what I'm saying? The side chick is always, I don't have to keep you. You don't live here. You feel me? So yeah, it's fun when you come, but it's not, I don't want you all the time. So I think That's a hurdle to get over. Me as a fan, bro, I'm gonna be real with you, and I'll end on this. I imagine because all the foolishness that circles around the Miami Dolphins and Ross and this happened and that happened, and people are like, oh, they should move the team, they should take the team. It's never had any traction for real. Never, ever had any traction. And I'm like, bro, there's no way I can go for the Dolphins. Like, you know how the Ravens were once the Browns, you know what I'm saying? And now the Ravens have Super Bowls. Can you imagine what someone from Cleveland felt like when the Ravens won the Super Bowl? You feel me? There's a couple other teams out there like that too, like the Rams. The Rams went from St. Louis to LA and they won Super Bowls now. Like, bro, that's supposed to be St. Louis rings. Can you, bro? I'm gonna say something sinful on this podcast. If the Dolphins move to Orlando, bro, it might not feel the same for you. Like, you might be all right to rock with it. But for me, bro, it's like, this ain't the Miami Dolphins. This the SeaWorld Dolphins. This the Orlando Dolphins. You know what I'm saying? This is not the team that I sat on top of my house to watch on the Jumbotron across from 27th Ave and 29th Street. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is no longer the Miami Dolphins. If the Dolphins move anywhere outside of Dade or Broward County, they are no longer the Miami Dolphins. Like, bro, I can't do it. But if they move to London, bro, I think I still.
I was just gonna say, like, but if they move to London, I know you'd be over here.
I still hey, if the Dolphins move to London, I'm moving to London. I'm just saying.
And they become like the London Pigeons or something stupid like that. I think what could happen is the NFL could have a developmental league over here. I think that might be the most plausible, and I think they've had it in the past. I know there was definitely a European league because I know a friend of mine who covered the European League, for at one point in the UK had an NFL newspaper. So I can imagine.
You talking about like NFL UK, NFL Europe? Yeah, that used to be a thing.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And I can imagine them kind of doing that. So I guess the equivalent will be like how the NBA has their, is it D League or G League, whatever it is?
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I think it's D League now.
Yeah. But you have a situation where the NFL basically has, so you have an option. You can either go play in Canada, the XFL when that returns, or from February till March, or maybe even like March until June when it's a bit hotter, even though it rarely gets hot. It's a bit warmer.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, we're gonna have a developmental league. 2-3 months of football around Europe. The stadium won't be as big, but because that's like the end of football season. Those Sundays are like FA Cup, all that kind of stuff. So I can imagine a small 8-team league. In around Europe, you have, I don't know, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, Wembley Stadium, Old Trafford. Probably get on Twickenham, the rugby stadium, which has hosted NFL games before, and you kind of say, cool. It's not a full-time NFL league, but that's kind of like a little preview to see, okay, how much traction is this small 8-team league doing in the summer? What are players happy over there? And you might find same way players played in the XFL and got called up to the NFL. You might see a few players, and it could be a nice way for players who get drafted or about to get drafted, put some NFL stuff on tape. I think that's probably the most likely because I just can't see unless it's a full division, I can't see having 1 or 2 teams in Europe, let alone London, and then having flying back and forth.
But then you would think, does that dilute the current product? You see what I'm saying? Does that, you see how they go crazy over there for the 4 weeks that the NFL does come over there? If you have a developmental league over there where the product is not as good as the current product, which the current product isn't that good either in Europe. So you have just call it the developmental league over there. does that dilute the current product where it's a frenzy every time the NFL comes to town? Or do they get so tired, like, well, we have it here now, and now I don't want it? So I don't know. I think we're a long way away from a division for sure in Europe, but
Yeah.
I do think I do think the Jags can actually still play in London and make it work. But one team maybe, I doubt two teams, but a division, in theory, it's the right thing to do, but I doubt it works.
But very quickly, if they are going to move a division over here, they have to realign the rest of the divisions and move Miami to the proper division, because Miami should not be in the AFC East. We've done a whole episode on it. I'll link it here if I have to. If you're going to start messing around divisions, take Miami out of the AFC East, put them in the correct division, and there'll be balance restored to the NFL.
We'll win all the time in the AFC South. I'm just saying.
Oopsie.